Hey everyone, Matt Brady here, the Carolina Mortgage Coach. And on this episode of Behind the Closing Table, I'm with Caroline Whiteside of Carolina Homes Connection. So, Caroline, thank you for being here today. Go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about you and your story in real estate.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Matt. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
My husband and I bought our first home back in 2022, when the COVID craziness, as I would say, kind of started to dip down, but we were still in that pocket of having to compete a little bit against people. And I saw how important it was to have a good, solid agent who is on your side and willing to educate you. And so, um, decided to take a leap of faith, get out of my career in human resources, which had been quite a roller coaster, and join another roller coaster, which is
Mm-hmm.
real estate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been doing it for a few years now. Obviously, still some people would say still very green, and there's some aspects of that that are true, but um, just trying to be a sponge, learn every day, and as this market continues to shift, being able to pivot with it. So.
Okay. Awesome. What do you think has been the biggest contributor to your early success in the real estate industry?
Um, I actually have to credit probably my HR uh career. You know, pe People may or may not know this, but when you're in HR, you're constantly putting out fires
Mm-hmm.
and you're constantly dealing with a lot of different personalities, a lot of quick changes, whether it be policy or um anything that's going on in the organization you're working for. And then also just dealing with everyone from, your lower level employees that maybe aren't educated to folks that are, don't even have a clue
Mm-hmm.
how much money they're making, and
Yeah.
so they're it's been good on both the buyer and seller side, to have that experience, to be able to know how to maybe sell to different people the idea, the thought, the dream of real estate. Because I also used to have to, I mean, you used to have to, in HR, you were the
Yeah.
ultimate seller.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. So, I'm sure you've seen even, even though you've just been doing this a few years, agents get in the industry because they see social media, they see the TV shows, and what do you think is a big misconception being a real estate agent that, people don't realize when they get into that career?
I mean, it sounds kind of cliche, but I would say ultimately that it's easy.
Mhm.
We just go out, we put signs in yards, and we show houses, we open up homes that look amazing and everything, and I'm like coming away with a big fat
Yeah.
commission check. And sometimes it does work that way. Sometimes you show somebody two or three homes, they find the one they love. But it takes a lot. There is a lot that happens before you ever get to a closing table, a lot of steps, and a lot of people and parties that you have to navigate
Mhm.
and deal with, not just on the other side of the closing table, but even on your side, dealing with the lender, dealing with the appraiser, dealing with um closing attorney, whatever, inspector, if it's FHA, there's so many things to navigate. And I think people, if you're a good agent, in my opinion, um, you are really hiding your client, you're shielding your client from so many of those hurdles to where you're handling things that they don't even know. Like
Mhm.
maybe you tell them after they've closed and be like, listen, you almost didn't,
Yeah.
we almost didn't have it. But being able to pivot and navigate that it's not as easy as, HGTV or whatever
Yeah.
makes it, or even social media.
Yeah, definitely. There's you can see stats everywhere that 80% of the business is done by 20% of the agents, whether on a brokerage level to the industry as a whole. You know, what do you think separates the good agents from just your average agent out there?
That's a good question. You know, I think a lot of people do go into it thinking it's going to be easy.
Hmm.
And when they get the taste that it's not, they go right back to maybe the career they were in before. Um, I'll be transparent. Like, I have a side job. I think a lot of newer agents do. And in some ways, my side job, it can benefit me. It gives me some downtime to focus even further on real estate. I don't do anything, excuse me, that would take me away from being able to help my clients, but it's still something that can offset income while I'm still continuing to build my business. And then I think too, for me, um, really surrounding myself with people who are successful in the industry. In our firm alone, we've got a couple people that I really tap into, and what has worked for them, what has not worked for them. That's a big one.
Mhm.
I one thing that's funny is one time I had an agent tell me, she's like, "Whatever you do, put that key in your pocket," because she had dropped the key into the house down in the deck, and the deck, and so then she's crawling under the deck, and I'm like, oh gosh, people have no idea what we do as agents. And so it seems so small, but I can guarantee you, Matt, when I open that door, I'm putting that key in my pocket.
But I've also heard stories of you get back in the car, it's 30 minutes later, 50 miles away, and the key is still in your pocket.
Y- Okay, I have done that. I have done that, and I had to turn around, and I'm like, well, a good thing I've got a good podcast to listen
Yeah.
to. Um, But yeah, so I think for me, it's really been being a sponge. Anything I've ever started, I've wanted to be I still am. I'm like, you can never, I never want to be under the impression that I'm right about everything, or that like my way is the highway. There's no 100% right way to be a good agent. I think you find your niche, you find what you're good at, you find, um, what works and doesn't work for you, and really honing in and learning from people who've been doing it for a while, because they've seen the shifts that real estate takes. And I think now I'm just now getting into that first big shift, being in it for now three-ish years. And I've leaned heavily on some experts in the field. So
Yeah. And I'm sure you've even seen a change in the market from when you bought to now being in the industry now. Um, what would be, in this market now where, interest rates may feel higher just because of recent history of all-time lows that we've seen, even though now is, closer to where we would historically be, if it wasn't for those few years, just a few years ago. But also, it just, if, some houses still sell in a day or so, but you have a lot more houses sitting on the market for longer. What are in this climate that we're in, this real estate climate we're in right now, specific to our area, obviously across the country is dealing with different things. What are your tips to your buyers? What are your tips to your sellers right now? What expectations are you setting for people? You know,
yeah, that's a good question, because even for myself, buying in 2022, the shift is pretty significant. Had my husband and I waited, 4 years or even a year or 2, or even really truly waiting a couple months, the shift was significant. And seeing that from my own perspective as a first-time home buyer, I think it better helps me educate first-time home buyers. Um, the main thing I would say to folks, and actually, Matt, I gotta give you credit
uh-huh,
for this one. With rates being so volatile right now, being able to look at, okay, if rates stay here, what is your payment gonna look like? If rates shift a little, what is your payment gonna look like? Can you afford both? If you
uh-huh,
can't afford both, we're not looking in the right price point.
uh-huh,
The other thing is too, if your other option is renting, I mean, yeah, you could go spend 2,400 bucks renting in a decent area that to get easily to Charlotte, or wherever you need to go. Um, but you're not, that money's going away.
uh-huh,
You're essentially flushing it down, and you're not going to get it back. Whereas you might drive a little bit farther. Maybe you add 10 minutes to your commute, and you're paying a $2,000 mortgage, and it's going towards, a forced savings for you. Um, and you have equity in something, and having the American dream. So, a big thing too I focus on is a lot of my first time home buyers that I'm helping are in their 20s, and The average first-time homebuyer in the US is 40.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking about this at 24 or 27 or 32, you're already ahead of the curve.
Mhm.
You're not behind. And the first home that you buy doesn't have to be your forever dream, vaulted ceilings, no popcorn, the whole like, our parents, our grandparents had to start somewhere and it didn't look like where they are now. So I always try to tell people, like, if you're waiting, well, what are you waiting for? Um, if you're waiting because you're trying to get something paid down, or maybe you've got student debt or something like that, well, let's talk with a lender. Let's see how much that's really going to change your payment, your interest rate, your situation. If you're going to take another 5 years to pay debt down, what can that look like if instead you are investing in a home?
Yeah.
So, kind of trying to bust some of the myths that are out there. Um, Sometimes the hurdles of not that all parents' advice is bad,
Mhm.
but, kind of realizing too that the market that your parents bought in is not what you are gonna
Mhm.
buy in, and needing to kind of surround yourself with good expertise, um, and looking at your entire financial package. So that's kind of on the buyer side. And then on the seller side, that's a hard one. That I find the seller side to be a little bit more challenging because, we can look not too far in the past and see homes were flying off the shelves. You could put a sign in the yard and boom, your home was gone. And now we are not in that market. Um, Now some homes, like you said, some homes are going to come off in a day or two, and those are going to be your gems. Those are going to be homes that have been immaculately kept or have a lot of upgrades or updates. And the other thing too is we have a housing shortage. A lot of people who are in the 2.5, 3% interest rate area, they can't go anywhere. They're a little bit stuck. And so we're kind of seeing the effects of having those really low interest rates. Yeah, it seemed great, but the long-term effects are starting to hit us. And getting sellers to realize that um, they're gonna have to give a little more than they would have maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Buyers have more time on their hands. They're not having to make a quick jump. They may look for 6 months and see what's out there and see how things change, especially with how interest rates are changing. So setting up expectations, especially now in the past couple months as worldly
Mhm.
factors are starting to impact the market, making sure they understand where their house sits, especially in sorry, I'm hearing feedback. You
Oh,
hear me?
you're good.
Okay.
So I'll
Okay.
make a note of
Sorry.
that. That
Yeah,
was
sorry.
12-minute mark.
That was like an echo.
So you can repeat where you were, or
Okay.
just I'll tell them to note around the 12:30 mark till
Yeah, it was like an echo,
13.
sorry. Okay. Um, Train of thought. So, making sure they understand kind of where their house sits, where they are, whether it's location, sometimes county matters, sometimes school district matters. Um, they needing to know too, like, is it something as simple as painting? People have a really hard time seeing past paint colors, brightening, lightening. And then I think more than anything, them understanding what does the new construction look like around them? Because that's going to be your biggest competition. Um, New construction is going to compete with you on rates, on top of the fact that able to offer certain incentive packages that a typical seller can't. And then they're getting into a brand new home.
Mhm.
So making sure it's not all doom and gloom. I don't mean to make it sound like it is, but making sure they understand the expectations, and you may sit for a few
Okay.
months before you find the right buyer. So
So I've two parts off the listing side, especially I think a growing market is first time sellers. A lot of people jumped into the market, over the last few years just because the opportunity that was there. So now, if you're one of the lucky ones, you're sitting on a lot of equity. It may be worth to invest some of that equity into the house to make sure you get top dollar. So when you come on the market, you are one of those gems, you are one of those houses that are standing out so you can move fast. If you had to list, three things that you think if you're going to invest in your house or some type of renovation, because there's so many things that you can put your money in and not get your money back from, or you maybe not have the expectation of dollar for dollar, but it's going to add the most bang for your buck when it comes to, a renovation for your home. what would be 3 things that you would invest in or look at doing? Obviously, it's gonna be property specific on what's going on, but what are 3 areas you think are smart places to put your money?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I do wanna hone in on it. It's gonna be property specific, but, um, unless you have very bland walls, I find that it's really hard for people to see past paint color. And not to mention, even if you have kind of more, blank canvas walls, so to speak, what are their condition? Um You'd be surprised what even painting your trim in your home can do. We don't realize how much damage we do, especially see your cute dog back there.
Oh,
My dogs have torn up my I can't have anything nice when you have dogs. So I would say paint. And not necessarily if you can't afford to do your whole home, um, look at maybe that main level, your kitchen, your living room. Um, I would also probably say curb appeal is a big one. Um, I think people definitely have a hard time looking past if you're, it's hard. We're in a drought. So nobody's yard looks great, but you don't want to drive up to a home and it's doesn't have any curb appeal, or maybe, you'd be surprised what a few bushes can do and shape a home to give it some light. I've actually been, um, on the buyer side to show you how it affects the seller side is some of my first time home buyers that think a house looks awful. You throw it in AI, you put some bushes in front of the house and they're like, "Oh my God, change the whole thing." And I was like, "Yeah, like it's amazing what a trip to Lowe's can do." Um, and so that would be probably another thing. And then I'm gonna go a toss up between if you're going to update kitchen and bathrooms, great, just don't do it halfway.
mhm,
That would be a big one. And what I mean by that is, you paint your cabinets, but you don't update your light fixtures, or you don't update, like, do the whole package. And it doesn't mean you have to spend the top dollar, but maybe be somewhere between that and the builder grade.
mhm,
Um, and then the other thing, and this doesn't cost you anything, is when an agent tells you to depersonalize your home, they really mean it.
mhm.
You're not selling your stuff, you're selling your home. And people have a really hard time seeing past, um, your Chapel Hill flag on the wall when they're a Duke fan. So,
Yeah.
so depersonalizing, decluttering, that would be probably one of my biggest.
Alright, awesome. I know, do you have conversations or a lot of your conversations with your sellers around, you know, I think an undervalued thing is talking to a lender if you are a seller to know, okay, well, what is our situation? Do we need to sell before we buy? Do we need to have a contingent offer? Do we have the assets to purchase with a low down payment and recast the loan later, or to where you don't have to be contingent? Is that one of the things that you're going into your sell it or your listing appointments on? What is their plan after selling this home?
Yeah, I mean, I think whether you're on the buyer or seller side, understanding what the end goal is most important. Because I can put a sign in the yard
Mhm,
anytime, but what are you looking to get out of this? Are you trying to move to a different area? Are you trying to get closer to family? Are you setting yourself up for the next chapter to help with retirement? Like, what does that look like for you? And making sure they understand too. I'll use a recent example. Instead of just dropping price,
mhm,
can we maybe offer something lender specific? Can we do a 2-1 buy down? Can we, looking into kind of incentives that are outside of the norm? If you offer 5K towards closing costs, what does that help in your price range? Um, Making sure they understand the difference between if someone comes in with an offer 30K below versus if you're gonna give them 30K towards concessions. Are they going to want more down the line after we're already through, like, once we're in due
mhm.
diligence? So, yes, to answer your question, 100%, it all depends on the
Yeah.
client, depends on their situation, and, how much do they owe on the home.
Mhm,
It's obviously a lot easier if someone owns their home outright. to do the math and get them to their next place. But yeah, where are you? Have you taken out any additional mortgages or HELOCs or what have you? And let's talk about that.
Okay. Now you mentioned that you deal with a lot of first-time home buyers. When you're having these conversations with people or you're showing houses, what are things that maybe not every client deals with, but something that buyers think is so important, and then at the end of the day, it's really not as big of a deal as they're making it out to be?
So many things, Matt. What where do I start? Um, so I think the biggest thing, and to kind of answer the question and help shape it of what are all the things, right? Is not really understanding the full package of buying a home. So, a lot of people think they just need to look at list price, or they just need to look at the rate, or they just need to look at how much money they're going to be able to get from their parents, or whatever the case may be. And it's all of those things put together. What can we get out of a seller? How long has a home been sitting on the market? Are we going to be able to get more out of this seller? Or are they just putting their house on the market to see where they're going to end up? Because what can I get out of the seller's agent is a big one too. What is important to that seller? How can I frame it to best work for my buyer? Um, the other thing I would say they overthink is I've got to have so much to put down, or I've got to have, X amount in my bank account to make this work. And while I don't want you to be house poor, you don't have to have 100K. I mean, none of us are going to have, unless you're just independently wealthy, most of us aren't going to have that. And so, really for first time home buyers, it does come down to payment. We don't want you to be house poor, but overthinking those, everything from, okay, well, if my purchase price is 300 versus 295, well, let's talk about what that really boils down to in a payment. And we're talking about like, don't eat Chick-fil-A a few times.
Mhm.
So
Definitely. When what the Carolinas is one of the top growing areas, and you represent a very unique area. You're right on the border of North and South Carolina. So when people are moving here, or if someone is watching this or listening to this and they're moving to North and South Carolina, what would you tell them are the things to consider to decide what side of the border you want to live on?
ooh, that's tough. So I've grew up in Gaston County, and that's in North Carolina, and then now I live in Lake Wiley with my husband. That's the South Carolina side, so I can kind of speak to both. First and foremost, I'm biased. I've lived here my whole life. So from a non-real estate perspective, from a lifestyle perspective, I think this area has so much to offer. You're only a few hours from the mountains. You're only a few hours from the beach. Both states have phenomenal college options. So if you've got kids that are coming into that area or that chapter of their life, I mean, you really can't go wrong with so many of the schools here. Um, from being outside Charlotte, there's always something to do. We've got, the Whitewater Center, we've got Crowder's Mountain, you've got Carowinds, from which is really good for all ages. But of course, as you know, Matt, having
Yeah.
younger kids, is a great way to spend a Saturday.
Mhm.
And then also we have like all the major sports hubs here. We're only a few hours from, Asheville area to the Raleigh area. And so if you're looking for an area that's growing, but also has so much for you to do and learn and culturally grow, this is definitely a place for you. Um,
And if you wanna get away, you have one of the biggest airports on the East Coast
right.
in
Absolutely.
Charlotte, so you can get
And
anywhere.
And I'll tell you too, even if the Charlotte Douglas Airport is not gonna give you the best rate, like drive to Concord, drive to,
Mhm.
there even I've got some family friends that they go to the Raleigh airport all the time, fly out
Yeah.
of there, save a couple $100 and so there's a lot of options. But yeah, you're right. If you want to get away too, it's
Yeah.
easy. And then, from a different perspective, I have to say this, if you, weather-wise, you need to, be okay with some humidity and
Mhm.
and, uh, and the, allergies.
Yeah.
I will be honest with you, pollen's rough, but I'm just being honest, you gotta know what you're coming down to. Then from the real estate perspective, you know, it's wild just going across the border, how different it can be. And in a lot of ways from a buyer standpoint, it's not that the process is really all that different. We aren't drastically different. It's more going to be your agent knowing the differences. But the in South Carolina, it's going to cost you a lot more to have an investment property.
Mhm,
So you're gonna probably have less renters in your neighborhoods, which is a great thing if it's your primary residence, because taxes are triple
mhm,
in South Carolina. North Carolina, you are, you're probably gonna see more renters. So
mhm.
that's one thing. School systems, without jumping too heavily into that, are pretty different. So kind of doing your due diligence and research as a parent, it would be important. And, property taxes are different in each state. And um, so, I mean, yes, there are some differences. I think it would be it's also lifestyle.
Mhm.
What's important to you? Where do you work? How close do you need to be? I mean, I could go on and on about which state might be better for you, but it's going to be case
Yeah,
by
definitely.
case
And
situation.
the one thing that Caroline didn't mention about the weather is over 1 week, you can experience all 4 seasons in
Yeah.
1 week.
I will tell like, I told someone who was moving here from up north, they're like, "Well, what do I need to know?" And I was like, "Listen, girl, just know your hair is not gonna do what you want it to do for, like, 6 months out of the year.
Yeah.
But if you can deal with that, I promise you the food is good,
Oh, yeah.
there's so much to do down here. I'm biased, I would choose it. I've been all over the US, and I would choose here any day."
Nice.
So
So, being a native to the area, is there a hidden gem where if people are looking to purchase a home that maybe doesn't get, a lot of attention right now that, could be a good opportunity for you to look at if it's not on your radar right now?
yeah, I mean, I'm always gonna start off asking someone, "What's your commute to work look like?" So that's
Hmm.
gonna be my biggest thing because while I love this area, traffic is something to consider. I do out of transparency, we are infrastructure-wise a little behind. Um, and so it's really gonna depend, but you know, I'm not gonna tell people Lake Wiley because Matt, if we get any more
Yeah.
traffic over here, we're never gonna get across the bridge. Now, I will say, speaking of like the York County area, there are parts of Clover that are really, really great. You still have that feeling of being out further but also having the easy access to
Hmm.
grocery stores or shopping. Um, I grew up not far from Belmont, which has just exploded, but I think you go a little higher into Mount Holly, and people are finding they can get decent homes, or Stanley get decent
Hmm.
homes and still have that feel of like, I'm not in the hustle and bustle
Yeah.
all the time. And then kinda going it down, back to South Carolina, the Indian land, area has really kinda grown up. So it really depends. I'm always gonna focus heavily on the traffic though. But
Yeah,
how far
definitely.
how far do you wanna be? Um, but
Eh,
yeah, and so many areas too are still still focusing and still allowing for a lot of green area, and if that's important to you, let's find that and find where that is. Because you can go out a little further, add 10, 15 minutes to your commute and still have that
mhm.
country-esque lifestyle. So
And a tip I would say if you're really looking to get the most bang for your buck on your investment over time, it's going to those outside areas before they're really developed. And that's where you're going to see your bigger appreciation jumps than just buying in an established area where you're going to see appreciation, but you're not going to see the places that are getting built. Just like if you go into new construction, you want to be one of the first people in the neighborhood because as pricing increases as more houses go on the market or as new phases happen and you're getting all that appreciation. It's the same thing of finding an area because Fort Mill, Charlotte, there's only so much they can build and they're going to
right.
have to start going out. And if you can get in those areas before it reaches there, you're going to get all the appreciation from the infrastructure, the businesses, everything going in there. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, and I'm finding more and more it's becoming important for a lot of people that they have a little bit larger lot. You can't
Mhm,
reach out and necessarily touch your neighbor, and they're not some places are building like that. You might be looking at a custom home that you have,
mhm.
a half an acre or more. So to your point, going out a little further, buying in somewhere that maybe has, three-quarters of an acre. The home might need a little work, but you're willing to put a little into it. 3, 5, 7 years down the road, you're like, oh wow, I'm sitting on some equity here. So
Yeah, definitely. We saw that in Clover. I bought in 21 and my house has almost doubled in value, and we got a Harris Teeter coming in. We got all these. I don't know why we have more gas stations and car washes. Like
yeah,
in a 2 mile area,
and
we have
oil
five.
change places.
Yeah, in a 2 mile area, we have five car washes. I'm like,
I
wow.
know. Bring us a
Yeah,
Chick-fil-A.
yeah, I know. So, as we get to the end of this podcast, one thing I like to throw out is, um, just tell me if this is myth or fact from Caroline's point of view. So I'll
Uh-oh,
be
here
looking
we go.
down. I won't be looking at the screen the whole time. I'll be going up and down. And we can hit on it if you want to dive into it a bit more. All right, first one, probably the number one. You need 20% down.
Myth.
All right. Spring is always the best time to sell.
Probably fact, but it's also gonna depend on what's going on in the market. But yeah,
Okay.
I mean, everybody likes to see some trees and not, dead leaves on the
Yeah. You should always wait for rates to drop. And the reason why you hear that often, I will say this, is as rates come down, if you were thinking about buying and your excuse is I'm waiting for rates to come down, how many other people do you think have that same mindset? So what happens? It's simple supply and demand. When rates go down and more people want to buy, you have more competition. So yes, your rate might be lower, but you will pay more for the house. So it will probably net out at the end what your monthly payment is, to where you can always, as long as you qualify, you can refinance your mortgage, but you can't refinance what you purchased the home for. So you'll save more money buying at the cheaper purchase price and refinancing as rates come down than paying the lower rate at 50K more, 75K more, 30K more for the house. So that's my
100%.
soapbox.
Yes.
um, you should renovate before selling.
That's also gonna depend. Property,
Okay.
property. I mean, I
Okay.
think most of the time, yes, but it's gotta be,
And it doesn't
are
have
you
to be a
doing
heavy renovation. It could be like we talked about this episode, a
Yeah,
simple
I would say
painting, some
yes. I mean,
bushes, something.
yeah, you've gotta do you can't just sit and to put your home on the market without doing anything and expecting much return on
Yeah.
investment.
We're not
Um,
talking about not saying you got to have a whole kitchen makeover or something like that, but just like anything else, you might have to
Ooh,
put a
trick
little
me, Matt.
put a little money in. Um, Open houses sell homes.
Gosh, don't get me started on open houses. They can.
Hmm.
We've got someone in our firm that's like the queen of open houses. I'll give it to her, but don't expect you're going to do an open house and it's going to sell like that.
I will say, open houses do not trump pricing the home wrong.
Correct. Yep.
So it has to be in conjunction with popper pricing. Popper pricing on a home, and you can get more buyers coming through that open house than you don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
So Zillow is always accurate.
Man, my
All
nemesis.
right. All right. And then the last one, and this could be good for, your first time sellers. The highest offer is always the best offer.
Usually, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So what do you say when it comes to offer? We'll end on that before we go into our closing. What are some things that you always have your listener, your sellers, review when they're looking over an offer? What are the key things to look at when you receive an offer on your home?
Yeah. So honestly, how does it fit your situation? Are you in a bit of a pickle and you need to sell quick? Or is this something you can wait on and you're not worried about whether this is the best offer or not. Does it have contingencies? Or, do you have to wait on the next person or the person who's wanting to buy, waiting on them to sell?
Mhm.
If they are waiting to sell, is their home already listed? Is it not already listed? Um, if they haven't already listed, are they about to start? Are they
Mhm.
about to put it on? Or is it going to take them 2 months to get it ready to do? Um, Not just looking at purchase price, doing a net sheet, understanding they're already asking for some closing costs now? Are they gonna be also asking for, a new roof? So kinda looking through the whole process and not just the right now, like, what's the due diligence gonna look like? Do we have some things about the home that may need to be done that they're gonna expect? And how much are you willing to give?
Okay.
So
And then how do you handle going into your listing appointments on they want to list here, but the value support here? How do you handle those conversations?
It's definitely even shifted more in the past couple of months. Maybe earlier this year, I might have even been approaching that a little differently than, in the last
Mm.
month, you know?
Mhm.
And ultimately, I always tell sellers and buyers, depending on, these are your rights. This is what you are allowed to do. However, you have hired me to be your agent, to be your expertise, to be your ears and your guidance, and the market supports here. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. But let's have a plan for if you're going to list here. Um, do we give it 2 weeks? Do we give it a month? And then we kind of drop into let's see what our feedback is. Because if you're just expecting to stay here the whole time, I might not be the agent for you.
Okay.
So,
Awesome. So we talked a lot of real estate. We gave a lot of advice. We talked about, success as a newer agent and what they should do. Outside of real estate, what does Caroline like to do? What is what's something, outside of real estate you enjoy doing?
yeah, so I'm married and have 2 dogs, so they keep me busy. Those 2 dogs they're like my babies, so they keep me busy. Um, I also have a 2-year-old nephew I love to hang with. He's like, I'm his aunt. I spoil him to death. And then, of course, again, kinda going back, not to be a salesy person, but we do live in an area where I constantly have a concert I can go to.
Mhm.
That's probably a big one
Awesome.
for a sporting event, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Definitely. So, if people connected with you, connected with what you had to say, they agree with you, what you had to say, and they really like your guidance that you gave today, what's the best way for someone to get in contact with you?
Yeah, they can, either call or text me. I'm gonna vote a text, and the reason why is because as real estate agents, we get a lot of spam.
Mhm.
No matter what you do, you're still getting spam, and I don't want you to fall into that category. So, my number is 704-689-2681. You can reach me by phone. You can also reach me by email at caroline@carolinahomesconnection.com. My email is a little tricky, so Caroline at carolinahomesconnection.com. But yeah, a text message is always gonna because I'll call you,
Mhm.
but if you call me, don't leave a voicemail,
Yeah.
you're gonna end up in that
That's
filter.
my thing too. Leave a voicemail. If you're going to call me, at least leave a voicemail if I can't
Yeah.
answer. So
And
I
I
know who it
know,
is.
listen, I get it. I'm millennial through and through, and I get millennial and Gen Z hate leaving voicemails. I know, I am one, but just leave me a voicemail.
Yeah. Yeah, just so we know you're a real person or that you're not calling to sell us health insurance. Like, if you know, you know. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. So, everyone, thanks for watching or listening to the latest episode of Behind the Closing Table. Thank you, Caroline, for taking time out of your busy day to impart some knowledge on everyone today and give your opinion on a few things. We will talk to everyone soon. Everyone, have a great day. Thanks for
Thanks,
listening.
Matt.